Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And of course, we begin with Labour and the growing speculation that a number of MPs could be preparing to resign over disagreements with the party leadership over its handling of Brexit and anti-Semitism. A group of Labour MPs is preparing to make an announcement shortly on, quotes, the future of British politics. It follows reports that rebel MPs have been plotting to form a breakaway party. There are some pictures of the assembled media waiting for that gang of quite how many we don't yet know. Let's discuss this with our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, who's in the studio with me. Tamara, we've been keeping an eye on the feed from that meeting, even going to the extent of counting the seats. What are we expecting here? It's rather less a statement about the future of British politics, rather more a statement about these Labour MPs and their future in British politics.
Indeed, that is exactly what we're expecting, and the reason for looking carefully at how many seats there are. There's been intense debate among Labour MPs who disagree with Jeremy Corbyn about Brexit and a number of other things, about whether they should split off. Some of them have decided that now is the time that they should do that. It'd be interesting to see how many they get. There's been speculation of 4 MPs, 6 MPs. Certainly it looks as if we are talking about that sort of level. And if they do announce that they are going to leave the Labour Party, are they going to form a new party? Are they trying to attract Conservatives or Lib Dems or anyone else to join it? As I understand it, this is more about starting a new grouping in Parliament. But it certainly seems as if the catalyst for this is Brexit, because those MPs whose names are in the frame, if you like, including Chuka Umunna, Chris Leslie, those are MPs who are supporting the second referendum, so-called People's Vote campaign. They are very angry that they believe the Labour leadership told them in September at their party conference, we'll try and get a general election, and if we can't get one, then a People's Vote second referendum is on the table. They are now concerned that with little over a month until we actually leave the EU, a general election is not going to happen, and they believe the leadership are hostile to having a second referendum. So they feel that that is now irreconcilable. I mean,
there's also plenty of pressure coming from individual constituency Labour parties. The threat of deselection, I think, a report in the Daily Mail suggests as many as 100 Labour MPs might be facing that. Well, given that figure, if it turns out we see 4, 5, 6 Labour MPs leaving the party, I mean, how much impact will this actually have?
I think 4 or 5 or 6 MPs leaving the party will have a number of consequences. There will be those MPs who say they shouldn't have gone. It splits the party. They should have tried to stay and fight for what they want from within. We heard that message from Margaret Beckett, Labour grandee, yesterday. No fan of Jeremy Corbyn, saying you should try and stay in, because any split, even if it's not a huge one, and of course this. If that is how many Labour MPs there are, this does not look like something on the scale of the SDP. Any split is damaging, especially on a divisive issue like Brexit. I expect they might also get criticism, though, from those on their own side, from fellow travellers in the People's Vote campaign, who were saying, what does this do in terms of our Brexit policy? How are you planning to vote in Parliament in the next few weeks? And aren't you just selling out the rest of us? You've then got a group of MPs who were in a larger grouping discussing a new party over the past year, who were actually wanting to get Brexit done and dusted, and they have effectively been sold out as well. So I think you can get quite a lot of ructions in the party from with different wings, all feeling like they have been left out and not clear what the bigger strategy is in terms of whether they are starting a new party, a new grouping, or what this means in terms of how they will be voting on Brexit, because in the next few weeks that is the key thing.
Do you think that this split that we assume is going to be taking place in the next few minutes, and if they hurry up, that'd be very useful. But do we think that this makes, if the Brexit process grinds to a halt, does this make Theresa May calling a general election more or less likely?
Well...
No, the reason I ask is obviously the reason John McDonnell was talking about this over the weekend. He suggests that any split in the left makes it far more likely that you're going to see an extended period of Conservative government. I suspect there are those on the government side of the chamber who think that as well.
I think there's a big question about how the Labour leadership react to this, if this is what we think it is. If they go in an all-out assault and say, good riddance, we're going to put up a very left-wing Jeremy Corbyn compliant candidate in all of these seats against you, I think that could drive more MPs into that camp, and that could make it into a bigger problem for Labour. On the Tory side, they probably can't afford to be that complacent, because you've got a group of Tory ministers who are threatening to resign their posts if Theresa May doesn't rule out no deal. If that doesn't happen in the next couple of weeks, could you even see a couple of Tories joining in this group? There are certainly 8 or 9 Conservatives on the record as supporting a second referendum. Now, that is not to say they have anything else in common with the group we're expecting to see today, apart from on Brexit. They probably don't agree about the economy or about any of the other key issues in British politics. But if we are going to see a realignment, it's possible that there will be departures from the Conservative Party as well. So at the moment, it looks like it's very much in flux, and if I was the Conservative Party, you might not start the celebrations too soon.
Tamara, you keep one eye on what's going on the screen in front of us, but for now, thanks very much indeed. Well, we're joined now by the Labour MP, Peter Kyle, a member of the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee. Peter, you know I'm going to come straight in and ask you about what we're watching right now. I mean, what do you make of this? I mean, first of all, what have you heard? What is happening this morning?
I've heard the same as you have. You know, we have to just realise these people are friends of mine. I don't know who's going to walk through that door. I have no idea who's going to come out. But they were friends of mine at 9 o'clock this morning. They will still be friends of mine this afternoon. The politics of our country at the moment is in a really difficult place. Brexit has put our country into a moment of crisis. Our political party, the Labour Party and the Tory Party for that matter, are going through a period of change. And that is meaning that every one of us is having to find our own way through this. Now, the people who come out that door and stand in front of that microphone and make a statement today, they have decided one path forward. But I have sympathy for their position. They are friends of mine. I am trying to be understanding of what they're doing, and I want to listen really, really closely to what it is they have to say today. And then I want to reflect on what they have to say. I'm taking a different path, and lots of other people making their own way through this as well.
So you're not minded to join them?
No, they are... No, look, right now, I really want to talk about Brexit, and I want to talk about this compromise plan that I've been working on. Morning, noon and night, I am just thinking about this, sorting out the mess that Brexit are in. Right now, there are container ships making their way to Britain. They don't have a best before date on the products inside. They have a use before Brexit date inside. Our country is facing a crisis. I'm focused on that 100%. I will, when I get the time, focus on what these people are saying today. I'm interested in what they say today, and I'm going to act with a way that is human, because they are friends, and I'm going to show them the respect that I think my values as a person and my values as a social democratic politician owes at times like this, which is humility.
But given that presumably a big part of the reason for what we assume is a split from the party leadership is the approach to Brexit, given your amendment, do you think they perhaps fired the starting pistol just a little bit too early? I mean, yours does give a way out,
There's still going to be, it absolutely does. It shows a way through this, where every MP has to make their own decisions and can find their own pathway through it. I hope that there's still going to be MPs after this. I'll still be engaging with them. I've been sitting down with members of the SNP and Plaid and members of Parliament from every single political party in the last couple of weeks talking about this. And when this new grouping, if it is a grouping or a group of independents that are there, then I will engage with them in an open-spirited way, because I believe right now our politics need people that can communicate across all the different boundaries in politics. That's what I've been doing right to now. And if there is a group of people that take a different decision about their politics, where they are in the political landscape today, I will carry on engaging with them, because that is what our country needs.
But just before we conclude, do you think that there are sufficient numbers in your mind for your amendment as things stand? Do you think there is a majority for it?
What my and Phil Wilson's amendment does is it means that we can pass Theresa May's bill through Parliament, a really difficult thing for a Remainer like me to do. But it also means we use a Good Friday model to go back and say there is a confirmatory vote, which is binding, it is final. Not an referendum, not the best of three, it is an end to the withdrawal process. So everybody has to do something for this. So yes, I do believe there is a majority for this, clearly in the House of Commons. I've spoken to John McDonnell last week, to Keir many times. They are very clearly warm to this idea, and I believe people are gravitating towards it. This is a sensible way forward. It is a consensual way forward when a lot of people are being uncompromising. And I believe it's the best hope we've got to get us out of this nightmare scenario that we're heading towards.
Mr. Carwell, I hope you'll stay with us, because I suspect whatever we hear in the next few minutes may well have an effect on your amendment. But I just want to bring in your colleague, Neil Coyle, Labour MP, of course, one of those who's been keen on a second vote. I mean, first and foremost, do you approve of what looks like a group of soon-to-be former colleagues leaving the party?
Approve's the wrong word. We are 9 years into a Tory government, and a Tory government that has abandoned many of the principles of the Tory party by being sensible on business, being sensible on Europe, sensible on law and order, and actually that should be the focus today, a Tory split. Sadly, we've been put in a position where it looks like there are Labour MPs who've made me feel unwelcome and that our party no longer represent their values. And that should be something that the party hierarchy look at every level. What is it that's caused this position to arise? And were there any opportunities to challenge it? For example, when Frank Field felt he had to leave the party because bullying was not being taken seriously.
We'll just keep an eye there. Luciana Berger, interesting, the first one to come through the door there. There had been a suggestion that she might resign specifically on anti-Semitism. Just a warning to those viewing, there may well be some flash photography ahead. Luciana Berger, are you surprised to see her there?
Well, let's hear what they have to say before we draw any conclusion about what exactly is happening. But
Good morning,
it's no
everyone.
secret.
And in fact, let's have a listen in.
Let's do exactly that.
Here today. My name is Luciana Berger, and I am the Labour and... I am the Member of Parliament for Liverpool Wavertree. This morning, we have all now resigned from the Labour Party. This has been a very difficult, painful, but necessary decision. We represent different parts of the country. We are of different backgrounds. We were born of different generations, but we all share the same values. From today, we will all sit in Parliament as a new independent group of MPs. For my part, I have become embarrassed and ashamed to remain in the Labour Party. I have not changed. The core values of equality for all, opportunity for all, anti-racism against all, and social justice, the values which I hold really dear and which led me to join the Labour Party as a student almost 20 years ago, remain who I am. And yet these values have been consistently and constantly violated, undermined and attacked, as the Labour Party today refuses to put my constituents and our country before party interest. I cannot remain in a party that I have today come to the sickening conclusion is institutionally anti-Semitic. It was nearly a year ago that we saw the unprecedented event of a minority community, the Jewish community, taking to Parliament Square to demonstrate against the Labour Party, to say enough is enough. And yet since then, despite a mountain of evidence, we have only seen the situation of racism against Jewish people get worse. The leadership has willfully and repeatedly failed to address hatred against Jewish people within its ranks. And it is for these reasons and many more that I have made this decision today. I am leaving behind a culture of bullying, bigotry, and intimidation. I look forward to a future serving with colleagues who respect each other and who are committed to working together for our great country. We will publish a full statement setting out our position shortly, copies of which will be available at the end of this morning's event and on our website. My colleagues, who I'm also proud to call my friends, will now set out the reasons why they have each come to this decision, the principles and values by which we are guided, and how we intend to operate going forward as a new independent group of MPs. We will, of course, take your questions after everyone has spoken. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Luciana. My name is Chris Leslie. I'm the Member of Parliament for Nottingham East. This has not been an easy decision for any of us. We've all been Labour members of Parliament for very many years, in my case, more than 3 decades. But the Labour Party we joined, that we campaigned for and believed in is no longer today's Labour Party. We did everything we could to save it, but it has now been hijacked by the machine politics of the hard left. As Luciana said, our values haven't changed. We absolutely oppose this Conservative government and desperately want an alternative which tackles the barriers of poverty and discrimination by extending opportunity for all. But British politics is now well and truly broken. And in all conscience, we can no longer knock on doors and support a government led by Jeremy Corbyn or the team around him. Why? Well, for a start, the evidence of Labour's betrayal on Europe is now visible for all to see, offering to actually enable this government's Brexit, constantly holding back from allowing the public a final say. Conference policy has been cast aside, no guaranteed full participation in the single market anymore, no exact same benefits, no movement towards a people's vote. Choosing to stand by while our constituents' lives and future opportunities are hurt by Brexit is a fundamental violation of Labour's traditional values. But our differences go far deeper than Brexit. The past 3 years have confirmed how irresponsible it would be to allow this leader of the opposition to take the office of Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Many people still in the Labour Party will privately admit this to be true, but we owe it to our constituents now to say it publicly and honestly. The pursuit of policies that would threaten our national security through hostility to NATO, the refusal to act when needed to help those facing humanitarian distress, preferring to believe states hostile to our country rather than believing our police and security services, these are all rooted in the Labour leadership's obsession with a narrow, outdated ideology. They're hostile to business, large and small. They make impossible promises which everybody knows in their hearts couldn't be kept without putting the economy at risk. And they constantly pit one part of society against another, because to them the world divides between oppressor and oppressed, class enemies, when in truth the modern world is more complicated than this. And then, as Luciana was saying, there is an appalling culture. Intolerance, closing down of debate, abuse and hatred online, as you're seeing this morning, and offline in party meetings, and anti-Semitism. So we have no choice but to say collectively, enough is enough. There has to be a better way forward, and there can be a better way forward. Thank you. Angela.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Chris. My name is Angela Smith. I am the MP for Penistone and Stocksbridge in South Yorkshire. I was born to a Labour family in 1961. My father was a printer by trade, and my mother started work when I was a teenager, eventually moving on to a job as a receptionist in the NHS. For my parents, working class pride was not about enjoying poverty and wearing it as a badge of honour. It was about self-respect and believing that we could do better, that there was nothing wrong in getting on in life. In 1966, when many other 5-year-olds rooted for England in the World Cup, I had my first experience of political identity when my mother told me there was a different competition going on and that we supported a man called Harold Wilson. My family believed that Labour represented their interests and their values at Westminster. Underpinning that belief was a sense that Labour would help those who faced discrimination and barriers when it came to bringing out the best in themselves. Let me tell a brief personal story to illustrate the point. I went to a village primary and was recommended by my teachers for the top stream at our newly formed local comp. It was 1972. Imagine then my parents' dismay when I was placed in the secondary stream. My mother was encouraged to complain to the head teacher, who could not deny that decisions on the limited places available in the top tier had been based partly on where we came from. We lived in a council house. After one term at my new school, I was advanced to the A stream, but unfortunately, the damage was done. I doubted my academic ability and it hindered progress. It was only when I became an adult that I started to believe in myself, and at 29, graduated from Nottingham University with a good first degree. That process was long and difficult and entrenched my belief that nobody should be judged by where they come from. Nobody should have to work 2, 3, 4 times as hard to develop his or her talents and abilities. We all have something to offer, whoever we are. Most people are like my family. They do not want to be patronised by left-wing intellectuals who think that being poor and working class constitutes a state of grace. What they do want is a fair crack at the whip and opportunities to succeed. They also believe that everyone in our country bears a responsibility to make a contribution towards keeping our society safe and prosperous. But these values are no longer valid in today's Labour Party. And that's why I have made the very painful decision to resign my membership and become an independent MP with my colleagues and friends here today. Gavin will now talk about our shared values.
Thank you, Angela. My name is Gavin Shuker, and I'm, since 2010, been the Member of Parliament for Luton South. This is my first and only job in politics. Representing my hometown is a great honour, and I stepped up to do it because, for me, serving your community in that way is public service. We're leaving the Labour Party, not only because of what it's become, but because, like millions of others, we find that our values no longer find expression in today's broken politics. We believe ours is a great country. Perhaps more importantly, so do the vast majority of the British people. We believe that our first duty is to do what it takes to keep people safe. We don't think every problem in the world is created by the West. In fact, we're proud of our values, home and abroad. We want to work with other countries around the world to tackle our shared challenges, not turn our face against them. We believe that a strong economy delivers the best public services and that government is the custodian of money that others have worked hard to earn. We back well-regulated business, but in return we expect them to provide decent, secure and well-paying jobs. We believe in the innate creativity of individuals. People are powerful and they're capable of taking responsibility in their own lives. They should. And government should work to remove the barriers of poverty, prejudice and discrimination that hold all too many back. We believe in strong democratic institutions, a free press, the rule of law and a politics that doesn't only bow to the loudest voices. We're sent to Parliament to exercise our best judgment and provide leadership. We're representatives accountable to those that elect us. And we believe that these are values that are shared by the majority of the British people, our friends and our neighbours. These are values that once would have been considered mainstream in our parties of government, but not anymore. Today they seek to set our communities against one another, poisoning our debate and dividing our country. At the root of today's broken politics lie our broken political parties, guilty of a willful failure of action and an abdication of responsibility. The complete absence of leadership at the moment our country needs it most. Competing visions of the past, providing no hope for Britain's future. To express these values in today's Labour Party is no longer possible. It's turned its back on the British public, their hopes and ambitions. That is why we've taken this step today.
Thank you, Gavin. Good morning, everybody. I'm Anne Coffey, the Member of Parliament for Stockport. a town I've represented for nearly 27 years. It is a great privilege to be an MP. My father died a year before I was elected. He would have been proud to see the chance for a better life he had fought to give me realised in an achievement beyond his dreams. He believed passionately in education. But without the Wilson's government's commitment to providing alternative routes to higher education through expanding places in polytechnics, I would not have got a degree. Hope and determination of an individual by itself is not enough. I spent 20 years working as a social worker with families, but social work cannot be a response to inequality and lack of opportunity. I joined the Labour Party 41 years ago to elect governments that understood that real opportunity for families only comes when the right policies are in place. I am proud of the achievements of the last Labour government. I thought I would be in the Labour Party for the rest of my life. But political parties are not an end in themselves in a parliamentary democracy. The Labour Party has lost sight of this. It is no longer a broad church. Any criticism of the leadership is responded to with abuse and accusations of treachery. Anti-Semitism is rife and tolerated. The current leadership have been very successful at changing this party beyond recognition, and in doing so is failing the people who have supported the Labour Party all their lives and who I joined to help. Loyalty cannot be an end in itself, so I leave the party with great sadness, but in hope that we as an independent group can start to change a political system in which people feel they have no voice. I remain totally committed to continuing to serve my constituents. Our values haven't changed, my values haven't changed.
I'm Mike Gapes, the Member of Parliament for Ilford South. I've always considered myself Labour to my core. I grew up in a working class family in a council house in Chigwell, Essex. My dad was a postman and trade union branch secretary. My mum worked in a newsagent shop. My parents, my education at Buckershill County High School, a year I spent as a voluntary university, all taught me the importance of fighting racism, poverty and injustice. I joined the Labour Party more than 50 years ago in 1968. I've been active at all levels since then, from young socialist branch treasurer to chair of the National Organisation of Labour Students, and I worked for 15 years in the Labour Party headquarters, including as head of the international section of the party. And since 1992, I have been the Labour and Cooperative Member of Parliament for Ilford South. I am sickened that the Labour Party is now a racist, anti-Semitic party. I'm furious that the Labour leadership is complicit in facilitating Brexit, which will cause great economic, social and political damage to our country. Jeremy Corbyn and those around him are on the wrong side on so many international issues, from Russia to Syria to Venezuela. A Corbyn Labour government would threaten our national security and international alliances. Now, this is personally very difficult for me. I've got lots of very good friends locally, nationally and internationally through the Labour Party. But I must be true to myself and my values. It's been a great privilege and honour to serve my fantastic constituents in Ilford South for 27 years, and I intend to continue to represent them as a member of the new independent group.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Chukwuemeka. I'm the Member of Parliament for Streatham, the area I'm from and grew up in. As you've heard from all of the contributions, the values which have driven our decision today are shaped by who we are, where we are from, our experiences. I'm of mixed heritage. You might not be able to tell. I'm a quarter English, a quarter Irish, and half Nigerian. My forebears came to this country driven by the hope and optimism that if you put the effort in, you can in Britain. My father arrived from Nigeria with no money, and he worked his way up to become a successful entrepreneur. In spite of the prejudice he experienced, the platform this country gave him to succeed was Britain at its very best. But we've had our ups and our downs. He, the only breadwinner in the family, was killed in a car crash when I was just 13. His death taught me that regardless of your circumstances, people need one another. We want our families to get on in the good times, but my gosh, we need to support each other through the bad times. Too many in Britain face barriers in fulfilling their dreams, their potential, and people don't get the support that they need. We believe it doesn't have to be that way. Fundamental change is needed. Now, the last few years have shown the established parties are simply not up to this challenge. They can't be the change because they have become the problem. They have failed to provide the leadership and clear direction which the UK desperately needs. They are deeply divided. They have failed to fulfil their duties with the competence the public rightly deserves. They've put their party political interest before the national interest, and they don't represent the complex tapestry which is modern Britain. Now, there are those who will say there is no alternative. We are doomed to be saddled with the same old politics, that we have to settle for voting for the least worst option, or, simply to keep the other lot out, stop them from getting in, that no matter how incompetent they are, we have no option but to vote for these people. We reject this completely. When our democracy is failing, the British people have overcome the hurdles over history to build a better future. We demanded elected MPs take precedence over unelected lords. We insisted working men and women have the vote. We said our parliament should better reflect and look like the country in terms of gender and ethnicity, and now we have got to change our politics again. It is time we dumped this country's old-fashioned politics and created an alternative that does justice to who we are today and gives this country a politics fit for the here and now, the 21st century, not the last one. So we've taken the first step in leaving the old tribal politics behind, and we invite others who share our political values to do so too. You might come from a Labour background, but you might come from other political traditions. And yes, it's a difficult decision. Make no mistake about that. But think about it. You don't join a political party to spend years and years fighting the people within it. You get involved in politics. You join a party to change the world. So we invite you to leave your parties and help us forge a new consensus on a way forward for Britain. We will sit together as an independent group of MPs in the House of Commons from here on. We haven't yet assigned roles or responsibilities between us, but we will have our first formal meeting as a new group of MPs in the coming days. We want to finish today by speaking directly to the people who send us here, the British people. For far too long, political parties in Westminster, parties of which we've been a part, have been failing you. If you're sick and tired of politics as usual, well, guess what? So are we. That's why we've done what we've done today and why we commit to do things differently. We don't have all the answers, so we'll treat people like adults and be honest about the tough choices facing Britain. We don't have the big money or infrastructure of the political parties. All we can do is direct you to our website. Please sign up. And we're asking you to help us shape what the next steps should be. Building a new politics cannot be done in committee rooms in Westminster. So we want to invite you, the British people, to join us in this endeavour. If you want an alternative, please help us build it. The bottom line is this: politics is broken. It doesn't have to be this way. Let's change it.
Thank you very much, Chuka. Before we go to the question and answers, I look forward to taking any contributions or questions you may have. We would just like to take this moment as a group to extend our thanks to our family and our friends and the volunteers that join us here today. We would also like to extend our condolences to the family and friends of Paul Flynn MP, who we learnt passed away yesterday. I'm now going to open it up to questions. Laura. There is a microphone.
There's one on that side.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, BBC News. A question really to all of you. Many of your colleagues in the Labour Party are going to feel that you have let them down. Some of them may even feel that you are betraying them by leaving where you should be sticking together. What do you say to your colleagues and to members of the Labour Party who feel that way? And secondly, do you accept that by leaving, because of the way our political system works, that makes a Tory government more likely at the next election?
Thank you, Laura. I'm going to ask Mike to respond to that.
I made this decision, and it's a very difficult decision. After a very great effort, I did stay and I did fight. And I've been fighting battles on Twitter and elsewhere, and you see the reaction I've had over recent years. There comes a point where you have to recognise this is not the Labour Party that you were in. It has changed, and it has changed at all levels. The leader, the General Secretary, the National Executive Committee, the National Constitutional Committee, and the regional organising staff they are now appointed. This is not the Labour Party that I fought to save when Neil Kinnock was leader. It isn't the Labour Party that I fought against Trotskyists in student politics. This is the Labour Party which has changed beyond recognition. And you have to make a decision. It's not just the politics. It is whether you can feel a moral integrity to go along with things that you can no longer justify or accept. And I've come to my own breaking point. I cannot do that any longer.
Thank you. To address the second part of your question, Laura, we don't think that any of the major political parties are fit for power. And in fact, we also believe that parties do not own voters. And people up and down the country are saying to us now that they feel politically homeless. We're getting this every day. We get it in our emails, when we knock on the doors. It's happening all the time. People feel politically homeless, and they are asking and begging for an alternative. This is why we believe our politics is broken, and that something has to be done to build back a politics that people believe in. And we cannot be complicit in a political system which is broken and which is failing to put the country first and put people first.
Thank you. Thanks. Paul Brand from ITV News. Two questions. Firstly, 7 MPs might be enough for a dinner party, but not necessarily enough for a significant political party. How many others have suggested to you that they might be willing to join you? And is this designed to be a new movement? And secondly, instinctively, how do you think you are likely to vote in Parliament? Could you potentially vote with the Conservative Party on a case-by-case basis? And would you be willing to vote for the withdrawal agreement if it prevented no deal?
Gavin.
I mean, let me just pick up on the first point. Everyone's had a crack at the story, the Da Vinci Code of how many and who and what's happened, and there's a really obvious reason for that. Look, we're politicians and also human beings. We have conversations with each other all the time. And you will know from your reporting that if you talk to colleagues that aren't here today, their assessment of the situation in the Labour Party is remarkably similar to us. It is an incredibly hard judgment to come out and to make this stance today. There will be some who will see this today and will be agonising about what to do because they agree with our analysis, but it's hard to do something new. It's really hard. So look, absolutely, we might have a great dinner party with 7. I'm confident, however, that the arguments we're making, the recognition that neither of these parties are any longer fit for government, must impress on our colleagues the choice. And the choice for Labour colleagues is whether they're willing to go out and defend electing a Labour government with its views on anti-Semitism, national security, and its enabling of a hard Tory Brexit.
Just on the point that you raised, Paul, about, you know, a new movement, what have you. Look, the usual way that things are often done in Westminster is a little bit, you know, you have a podium, someone goes up and tells you how it's going to be. We're clear that there needs to be an alternative. People cannot be saddled with this appalling choice of incompetence, frankly. But the idea that you can kind of cook this up in Westminster is not the way that I think people want things to be done. So we want to invite all those, that there are millions of people who are watching what we're doing today, we believe, who feel politically homeless. But we need to get everybody involved in working out what the alternative should look like, its form, its structure. And so we're not being dishonest. Look, we think there needs to be an alternative. But for us to stand up, pontificate, declare a manifesto and all that at this stage on day one of us having just left a political party, I think would be getting a bit beyond where we need to be today.
Just on how you'd vote, sorry, instinctively, how do you think you
would on that, look,
vote with the government?
we've put out our values. You will see on our wonderful new website, theindependent.group. If I haven't got that right, Luciana will discipline me. But visit our website. You will see our list of values, who we are, what we believe, because that's where this comes from. It's about who we are, and you've heard a bit, we deliberately have told you a bit of a story about ourselves as people, because if politics isn't people, it's nothing, right? So we will decide on how we will vote on different things according to our values, and we are independent, by the way. So it might be that we have different views on different things, but the consistent point, the meeting point is our values. And like we said, it's not just Labour people who would necessarily subscribe to that, people from other political traditions. And make no mistake, it's not just Labour MPs who are privately wrestling with their consciences on this every single day. We know of lots of other members of Parliament in other parties too. The whole thing is broken, so we've got to change it.
Tom Rayner from Sky News. Would you now be prepared to fight by-elections, either by triggering them yourself or if they are brought about by constituents that are unhappy? And secondly, if you could explain why now? Was there a moment, a particular trigger for deciding to make this announcement today?
Ask Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way those two parts are answered by the same thing. I mean, we are at a time of massive national upheaval and crisis, and elections, general election, by-elections are absolutely not what is needed right now. We were elected in 2017. In our constitution, you don't just vote for a delegate with a particular party colour, you vote for an individual. And we feel that it's a fundamental principle in our parliamentary system that we use our judgment and our integrity to guide how we react to different events and circumstances. So, of course, for myself, the Brexit saga has been very much a tipping point. You know, I've been trying for a very, very long time to push and cajole and nudge the Labour Party to do what I would regard as its traditional values to point it towards, which is protecting jobs and livelihoods. But instead, we've seen a consistent attempt to put sort of political calculations above what I regard as the national interest. And that, for me, has been a tipping point. But there's a combination of issues, as you've heard today.
So there's one more at the front, then I'm going to come over to this side.
Thanks. Thank you. Andy Bell, 5 News. What do you say to those that you've basically just jumped before you're about to be pushed, that you had no place in the Labour Party and you weren't prepared to fight any more to try and change policy on a whole range of fronts? You could have stayed, you could have fought, but you've just given up.
I'll take that question, thank you. I don't think anyone can accuse any of us sat here on this platform of not speaking out. and challenging what we see to be wrong and standing up for those values that we've all set out this morning. It's not easy always to speak out, particularly when, as many of us have alluded to, there is a culture which seeks to suppress that speaking out. And I certainly, when I joined the Labour Party, thought I was joining a broad church. And it's now clear that that broad church, which brought many of us into the Labour Party, no longer exists. And therefore, we have to be true to ourselves and true to our values. And it would be much easier for us if we just kept quiet and kept our heads down. But we don't believe, or I certainly don't believe, that's what I came into politics to do. We came into politics to make a change, make a difference for the communities that we are privileged to elect to represent, and to also make a change for this country. And the status quo and carrying on as normal, in my view, is just not acceptable. Gary.
Behind you. Oh, thanks. Gary Gibbon, Channel 4 News. An awful lot of echoes here with the launch of the SDP and the words that they kicked off with in their declaration. Have you learnt any lessons from what happened to them? And why aren't you launching a centre party today? Is it because you haven't had any Tories turn up yet?
Thank you. I'll ask Angela to come back on
that. Thank you, Gary. Look, I just don't think the comparison with the SDP stands up to scrutiny. This is it's a different century, and the challenges that the country faces are on a scale that I don't think we've seen at any other time in the post-war period. I said earlier that voters feel politically homeless, but they also feel very badly let down by the main political parties, all the political parties, and they do not feel adequately represented at Westminster. The feeling out there, I think, is that the Labour Party has clearly shifted to the hard left, but equally, we now see the Tory party lurching to the hard right, and the Lib Dems lost the trust of voters years ago, as we all know. So we're now in a position where I think we feel a responsibility to break away from all of that and to play our part in rebuilding trust in politics by building a movement around our values so that we can create the change to build a better future. Now, in terms of not starting as a new party, I think that what we want to do is sit as a group of independent MPs and make the appeal to the people, as Chuka did earlier, to give people out there the chance to tell us what they want to see in a new, sensible, centre-ground political movement. It's not for us to determine what that party or what any future political movement should look like. We want to hear what people have got to say.
Thank you. Theo.
Is it the case that your group has something of a shelf life to the next election? Because apart from you, Angela, you're all sitting on quite large Labour majorities. So do you feel the pressure of time to make your point in the next coming months, perhaps until 2022? And would you coordinate with the Liberal Democrats? And thirdly, have you got a leader? And if so, who's it going to be?
OK, so as Chuka set out earlier on, we're going to have our first formal meeting as an independent group of MPs in a few days' time, and that's the point where we'll start talking together about assigning
Well, we will return to that question and answer session involving the independent group, the 7 Labour MPs, now independent MPs. Let's bring in 2 of their former colleagues within the Parliamentary Labour Party, Peter Kyle and Neil Coyle. I mean, Peter, to you first. I mean, your reaction, we were waiting for the rationale behind all of this, but it seems to be, tripartite, bullying within the party, anti-Semitism and the position on Brexit.
As I said before, I think every MP in the Labour Party at the moment is finding their own way through these difficult challenges and the changes within the party and the changes that we face as a country right now. I listened very intently to what they said, and my job is to go away and reflect on what they've said. They were friends of mine at 9 o'clock this morning. They remain friends of mine right now. And I owe it to them to act with humility, not to react too quickly, to jump to conclusions, and to try and be pushed into a tribal response to what actually is a real fundamental challenge to our body politic. The standout for me, and I've got to just say this really plainly, that seeing Luciana speak there, was an incredibly emotional thing for me to witness. She is somebody that I care about as a friend. I think she is a remarkable person, and I've seen her bullied from within our party, from across our party, from outside our party. People are in jail right now because of the way they treat a young Jewish woman in politics. This is something that causes me huge pain. Now, I'll be blunt about the question I'm asking myself, and we all have to ask ourselves, a Jewish woman has been bullied out of the Labour Party. What side of that line do we stand? So these are fundamental questions. Now, for me, right now, I am focused 100% on getting this compromise deal on Brexit through Parliament. That's all I care about right now. But I will be reflecting very carefully on what they've said. I owe it to them, and I owe it to the people who elected me and the community that I represent in Parliament to reflect very carefully on the fact that people are having to find a home outside of the Labour Party that I love so much.
Neil Coyle, it was suggested during the question and answer session there that there will be those within the Labour Party who view the Seven as traitors, as having let the party down. You're not of that opinion?
Certainly not, no. And I think most Labour members and supporters will look at this and wonder what the difference is between their values and those who've just chosen to make the very difficult decision to leave the Labour Party. And if I just make two suggestions. The swaggering brocialism must end. The bullying, intimidation, online and offline, must be better tackled. And on Brexit and on other policy areas, members must have their views held. There will be members who share those 7 Labour MPs' position on Europe in particular, who are feeling very angry and very left out of what our party is doing on this, the most fundamental issue facing our country right now.
Well, on the basis of what you both said already, would either of you bet against more of your colleagues within the PLP join?
I think what we need to do is see the response of other people in the party. And obviously, the response of Jeremy Corbyn is going to be fundamental in this, but I would point people towards the response of Tom Watson. Mm-hmm. Tom Watson is the deputy leader of the Labour Party, but he's the elected deputy leader of the Labour Party, and we know that there are different differences of opinion and different bodies within the Labour Party movement, and Tom does often give voice. He gave a speech at the Fabian Society a while ago where he actually said in very bold terms that if the Labour Party doesn't give voice to the social democratic tendency within the Labour Party, then somebody else will in politics. So this seems to be happening now. So I don't know if Tom has spoken yet, but I'll be looking very keenly to see what his response to this going forward is, and of course of Jeremy. So,
well, let me read you the statement that we have, and I suspect we will get rather more from the Labour leader throughout the day, but it's pretty short, pretty terse. I'm disappointed that these MPs have felt unable to continue to work together for the Labour policies that inspired millions at the last election and saw us increase our vote by the largest share since 1945. He continues, Labour won people over on a programme for the many, not the few, redistributing wealth and power, taking vital resources into public ownership, investing in every region and nation, and tackling climate change. He then goes on to mention the Conservative government bungling Brexit. One line in that statement, Neil Coyle, directed at the 7 people involved. What do you make of that response from your party leader? Does it deal with any of the criticisms? It doesn't look like it does to me. Does it deal with any of the criticisms that we've heard being made?
To be fair, I think it's tepid because it's an initial response rather than a more detailed action plan for how to look at how to prevent others leaving. But this is not entirely unexpected. And the response when Frank Field felt bullied out of the party should have been more dramatic. If there was no response or no insufficient response to Frank, let's hope, as an ordinary Labour member as well as a Labour member of Parliament, that response is not the same today to something much more dramatic and that could have much more dramatic implications for the constituents I am desperate to be part of a Labour government to work on behalf of.
Let's bring in our Sky's political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, who's been sitting here very patiently. What fascinates me at this stage is the way in which this group is describing itself. The independent group. There's no name of a new party. They're clearly leaving the door open for others to come and swell their ranks.
Yes, and others, including from other parties. You heard Chuka Umunna there say we can forge a new consensus and urged people from other parties to come and join them, whether they're Conservatives or the Lib Dems have already put out quite a warm response on Twitter. I think what has been surprising about what we've heard so far is really how emotional it has been for those MPs, particularly hearing from Luciana Berger and Mike Gapes about...
how long has Mike Gapes been in the party?
He has been in the party for over 50 years, an MP since 1992. Although he's been very critical of Jeremy Corbyn for the last 3 years, to those who said, stay and fight, his response we heard there was, I've stayed and fought and I didn't get anywhere. And actually, although the group of MPs who are disenchanted with Jeremy Corbyn is far bigger than this 7, and there was a feeling that this 7 agree with each other on Brexit, and there's far more MPs who were very angry about the party's handling of anti-Semitism. Just looking at Luciana Berger standing there saying, I now believe Labour to be racist and anti-Semitic. One of the other MPs there saying they're a threat to national security. I mean, this puts an incredibly large amount of pressure on other Labour MPs, I think, who might agree with some of that. And it's interesting how broad the prospectus is on their declaration. It's not just about Brexit, it talks about the economy, it talks about businesses. It is a programme which they hope other MPs can sign up to.
We're running out of time, so I just want to get a final word from our Labour MPs here. I mean, no way, there's no way around this. This is a dark day for the Labour Party, isn't it?
It is a dark day, of course it is. You know, Mike Gapes is loved in the Labour Party. He's loved in the PLP. He's encyclopedic on foreign affairs. He's generous with his knowledge. He is well liked, and for that, and seeing other people feeling there's no home for them in this political life, it is a really difficult moment. There was a very powerful moment during the general election when Jeremy Corbyn took his ear and said, you know, I'm a listener, not just a talker. Now's the time where he has to really sit back and reflect along with the rest of us.
And very briefly, Neil Coyle. I mean, can Jeremy Corbyn stop the rot?
Hopefully. But members need to see far more action, in particular to root out the bullies and the anti-Semites and the racists who have no part in our party.
Neil Coyle, Peter Carr, many thanks for joining us.